Here's a question I want you to sit with for a moment. When was the last time you bought something? Not because you needed it, but because of what it would signal to someone else? Maybe it was a car. Maybe it was an apartment in a neighborhood you couldn't really afford. Maybe it was a dinner at a restaurant you'd never normally choose, simply because it was the kind of place people like you are supposed to go. I'm not here to judge that. I've done it too. Most people have. But here's what nobody says out loud. That behavior, that quiet, relentless need to appear a certain way, has a price tag. And that price tag doesn't show up as a single line item. It shows up slowly, across years, in the gap between what you earn and what you actually build. Today, I want to talk about the status game, not to shame anyone who plays it, but to show you clearly and honestly what it actually costs, and why some of the most financially stable people you'll ever meet are the ones who quietly decided to stop playing. Let me introduce you to someone. We'll call him Marcus. Marcus is 29 years old. He lives in a mid-sized American city, maybe Charlotte, maybe Denver, maybe somewhere outside London or Frankfurt if you're watching from Europe. He has a decent job, a real job. He makes $68,000 a year before taxes. After federal and state income tax, Social Security, and health insurance deductions, Marcus takes home roughly $4,100 a month. That's his real money. That's the number that matters. Now let's look at his life, because it looks like a perfectly normal life. He rents a one-bedroom apartment in a neighborhood that feels right for someone at his stage of life, $1,450 a month. His car, a 2022 midsize sedan financed, runs him $480 a month. Insurance on that car, $140. Student loans from his 4-year degree, $310 a month. His phone plan, because it needs to be the latest model, $95. Subscriptions, streaming, gym, software, another $120. That's $2,595 in fixed monthly obligations before Marcus has bought a single meal, filled his tank, or bought a birthday gift for anyone. He has $1,505 left. Groceries, gas, dining out, clothing, the occasional weekend away, it goes. And at the end of the month, Marcus typically saves between $100 and $300, depending on how disciplined he managed to feel. And here's the thing. Marcus thinks this is normal. Because it is normal. This is the standard American or Western European financial life. Everyone around him lives roughly this way. But let's ask a different question. How did Marcus end up here? Because none of these individual choices feel reckless. They all felt completely reasonable at the time they were made. The car is the easiest place to start because the car is where the status game becomes mathematically visible. Marcus financed a $28,000 vehicle at 7.9% interest over 60 months. His monthly payment is $480. Over the life of that loan, he'll pay roughly $28,800 in principal plus $5,900 in interest. That's $34,700 for a car that, by the time the loan is paid off, is worth maybe $14,000. But why did Marcus buy a $28,000 car? He'll tell you it was practical. Good safety ratings, reliable brand. He needed something dependable for the commute. All of that may be true. But there was also a number in his head, a floor below which he wouldn't go, a price point below which the car would feel like a statement he didn't want to make about himself. That floor, that invisible minimum, is where the status game lives. Now let's look at the apartment. $1,450 a month. Was there a $1,100 option? Almost certainly. Was it in a slightly less interesting neighborhood? Probably. Did it matter functionally for Marcus's life? Not really, but it mattered symbolically. And so Marcus pays an extra $350 a month, $4,100 a year, to live at an address that feels appropriate. And the phone, the $95 plan with the latest model. There are prepaid plans for $25 a month that run on the same networks. Same calls, same data. Different story about what kind of person you are. None of these are villainous decisions, but when you add them up, the car premium, the apartment premium, the device premium, the clothing brand premium, Marcus is spending somewhere between $700 and $1,000 more per month than his actual functional needs require. Not because he's irresponsible, because he's playing a game he never consciously chose to play. There's a concept in psychology called social comparison theory. The idea, developed by Leon Festinger in the 1950s, is that human beings evaluate their own circumstances not in absolute terms, but relative to the people around them. We don't feel poor because we can't afford food. We feel poor when our neighbor gets a new car and we haven't. We don't feel successful when we pay our bills. We feel successful when someone we respect notices our apartment, our wardrobe, our restaurant choice, and registers approval. This isn't a character flaw. This is how the human brain was designed. In our evolutionary history, social standing meant survival. Being seen as capable, competent, and worthy of the group was a genuine matter of life and death. The problem is that this ancient operating system is now running in a modern economy where the signals are entirely manufactured. The car brand, the apartment neighborhood, the clothing label. These are not actual indicators of safety, skill, or character. They are products designed to be purchased specifically because they carry social meaning. And the companies that sell these products understand this far better than most consumers do. The luxury goods industry, the automotive industry, the real estate industry. They are not selling function. They are selling identity. They are selling your place in the social hierarchy, temporarily rented, at a price that compounds quietly over time. What makes this especially difficult is the reference group problem. Marcus doesn't compare himself to people who live on $25,000 a year. He compares himself to his colleagues, his college friends, the people he sees on his social media feed. And those people are all playing the same game. So the game feels like reality. It is not reality. It is a shared hallucination, a very expensive one. Let's go back to Marcus, and let's run a very simple calculation. We said Marcus is spending roughly $800 more per month than he functionally needs to. The premium he pays across his car, his apartment, his devices, his lifestyle choices driven by status rather than necessity. $800 a month is $9,600 a year. If Marcus is 29 now and continues this pattern until age 55, 26 years, that's $249,600 in nominal terms. Money spent maintaining an image. But here's where it gets more significant. If that $800 a month had instead been invested in a basic index fund averaging 7% annual returns, a very conservative historical estimate, it would grow over 26 years to approximately $680,000. Not through any clever strategy, not through risk-taking, simply by redirecting money that was already being earned away from status signals into a compounding account. $680,000. That's the retirement security Marcus doesn't currently have a path to. That's the financial independence that remains out of reach. Not because Marcus earns too little, but because the status game is consuming the margin that would have built his future. And Marcus isn't unusual. He's statistically average. The Federal Reserve's survey of consumer finances consistently shows that median Americans in their late 40s hold less than $90,000 in retirement savings. Not because they didn't earn enough, because the money moved sideways, into appearances, into premiums, into the monthly cost of looking the part. I want to be careful here, because this is the part where these kinds of videos usually turn into a lecture about cutting your lattes and driving a 20-year-old car. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is something more specific. The people who tend to build real financial stability over time are not the ones who deny themselves everything. They're the ones who develop a clear sense of which expenses actually improve their lives and which ones are just participation fees in a game they never chose to enter. There's a difference between spending money on things that genuinely matter to you and spending money to manage how other people perceive you. One of those is a choice. The other is a tax. The financially intelligent approach isn't asceticism. It's clarity. It's looking at your monthly outflows and being honest, not to a budget app, but to yourself, about which of these expenses you would still choose if no one could see them. Would you still rent that apartment if you worked from home and never had colleagues over? Would you still drive that car if no one you knew would ever see it? Would you still buy those clothes if you lived alone on an island? Some expenses survive that test. Many don't. The people who become financially stable in their 40s, not necessarily rich but genuinely free from money anxiety, are often the ones who made slightly unfashionable choices in their 30s. They drove the less impressive car. They lived in the slightly less desirable neighborhood. They didn't upgrade their phone every cycle, not because they were suffering, but because they understood clearly what they were trading. They were trading short-term social validation for long-term options. And options, the ability to change jobs, to take time off, to weather a crisis, to retire without fear, are worth more than almost anything you can display on a driveway or a wrist. The status game, when you look at it closely, is a game with no real winners, because the goalpost never stops moving. The income that felt like enough at 25 feels inadequate at 32. The car that felt like an achievement at 30 feels embarrassing at 36. The apartment that felt aspirational at 28 feels starter level at 34. Every time you reach the marker has already moved. You cannot win it. You can only spend your life playing it. I'm not going to tell you what to do with this. You already know what parts of your spending are driven by genuine satisfaction and which parts are driven by the need to be seen in a certain way. That knowledge doesn't require a spreadsheet. It's already there when you're honest with yourself. What might be useful is simply this. The next time you're about to make a significant financial decision, a car, a lease, a purchase, a subscription, pause for one moment and ask which version of you is making this choice. The you who genuinely wants this thing, or the you who wants to be the kind of person who has it. That distinction, practiced consistently over years, is worth more than most financial advice you'll ever receive. Marcus is a composite, but his situation is real, and it belongs to millions of people. It may belong to you in some variation. It's belonged to me. The point isn't guilt. The point is awareness. Because awareness is the only thing that actually changes behavior. Not shame, not spreadsheets, not motivation. Just the quiet, clear-eyed recognition of what the game is costing you. If this kind of thinking is useful to you, subscribing means you'll see more of it.